Tulsi Gabbard, United States Director of National Intelligence, is slashing her agency's workforce. Gabbard posting this statement that reads in part, quote, "Over the last 20 years, ODNI has become bloated and inefficient, and the intelligence community is rife with abuse of power, unauthorized leaks of classified intelligence, and politicized weaponization of intelligence," end quote. The reorganization includes slashing the intelligence office workforce by 40%. Gabbard says this will save taxpayers more than $700 million per year. And that is not all the Director of National Intelligence is up to. Gabbard has also revoked the security clearances of 37 current and former intelligence members. Gabbard says these members, quote, "abuse the public trust by politicizing and manipulating intelligence, leaking classified intelligence without authorization, and or committing intentional or egregious violations of tradecraft standards," end quote. Former Speaker of the House and former California Congressman Kevin McCarthy joins me. Nice to see you, sir.
Nice to be back.
Boy, she's mowing right through the DNI.
It needs to be done, too. I mean, remember, when I became Speaker, I removed Adam Schiff and Swalwell from the Intel Committee because we knew that Schiff was leaking. You could always see it when he would come in, they'd walk right out, someone would see what was told. And Schiff, sleeping with a Chinese spy, there's got to be other Democrats that could fill that spot instead of him. And Pelosi kept him knowing that.
Well, I've always had a problem with people leaving federal service and keeping their security clearance. I'm like, what's the point of that? Why do they have them?
You know, they shouldn't. Okay, now when members leave, when I left, even though I was part of the Gang of Eight, I lost my clearance. I recently, based upon some activity I'm doing now, had to go back and reapply to get my clearance and go through the system.
Well, that makes sense. If you lose, I mean, it should automatically go away. And if you need it again, it shouldn't just be everyone out the door. You get to keep it with you.
And what you watched how political they used it, especially those Democrats when they were doing the laptop.
51 of them.
Yeah, they should all lose their clearance because they made it all political. They knew what that was, but they were lying to the American people, using this clearance to saying, I know something you don't. And they used it for political basis.
They said that the laptop was and it was Russian mischief, Russian misinformation, Russian mischief. And the problem with it, to make it most appalling, either they were completely stupid, or they were incompetent, or they were deceitful, because that laptop had been in the possession of the FBI. This was written in late October of 2020. The laptop had been in the FBI possession since the previous December.
Yeah, so they knew that it was true. It was Clapper and the others try to change an election.
How do they get away with this?
They should be able to get away with it.
Is there a crime that's associated with it?
I think the very basic, they should lose their security clearance because they used it as an authority to tell the American public on a political basis, and that was fundamentally wrong, and they knew it. They never should have gotten involved.
Well, your senator, Senator Schiff, Adam Schiff, who you just remarked about, he got rewarded by the California voters. He was raised from Congress to the Senate.
Very unfortunate. I think one of the mistakes, I tried to move what he had done to the American people by the number of lies to the Ethics Committee. One of our members wanted to move it to censure, which he used to raise money to help him win an election. I thought if you took him to ethics and people literally saw it on a basis, he would come out with a whole different situation.
Well, what I always thought was bad about Schiff is that he'd come up to the microphones and he'd make a statement as the either the chairman of the Intel or ranking member of the Intel. And, you know, how are we to challenge it in the media? Because we're not inside the room at all. There's no way you can challenge. You just have to accept it. And you think, like, why would he lie about that? And when he's actually a former assistant United States attorney, I mean, he has some respect for the law. And it was unbelievable to me.
Well, why would they move impeachment to the Intel Committee? It's supposed to be judiciary. Why would the so-called whistleblower come forward when you find out had already met with Schiff, had known and worked through? Everything he would do, what he would leak, was not true. And he used it as the impression, well, I'm the chairman of Intel. I know stuff that you don't know, and you can't question me.
Well, he's being investigated right now.
He should be investigated.
Well, for something different.
But what he put the American public through, knowingly lying when he did it, he should be investigated.
Well, what he's being investigated for, and he's going to have an opportunity to respond to it, is claiming 2 homes as his primary residence, one in Potomac, Maryland, and one out in Burbank, California. And he's being investigated for that to see whether or not he apparently on a mortgage application.
You can't live someplace outside of the state that you're elected.
Well, then, well, I don't know. He will have to sort it out with the Trump administration. All right. Let me turn to, as long as we're on talking about California, former Vice President Kamala Harris. Is she going to run, do you think?
No, I don't think she runs. I think when she really thought about running for governor, and she held back a long time before made that decision, I think she realized she couldn't win.
As governor?
As governor.
Really? Who can beat her governor?
I think a lot of people. I think at the time there was probably a chance a Republican could win if she was the nominee for the Democratic Party. And so she backed away. Look, if she could have walked in, being governor of the fourth largest economy in the world, that would be a very powerful position to have. And why wouldn't she run for it? The only way she wouldn't run for it is she couldn't win. And the Democrats want to distance themselves from everything about Biden. Remember, wasn't it just a year ago today she was nominated for president? The hoopla, the celebration, the convention. Now we've got a current governor of California that is the biggest chameleon. You know, if you looked at him four months ago, he had all the conservatives on his podcast, from Bannon to Charlie Kirk, and now today he wants to go extreme the other way to act like he's fighting the president to try to become the nominee.
Is her political career over, Kamala Harris?
Look, I've watched other people in California. I've watched a vice president and Richard Nixon run for governor and lose and come back to become president from California. I don't think anything's over. She's at a younger age than where Biden was. I don't think she's got a future, but I never say never.
Gavin Newsom have a future as a presidential candidate on the head of the Democratic ticket?
I don't think he could ever get there when people really, if he had to go for a longer campaign, he couldn't get there because people would see the truth behind him. There's no principle. There's no philosophy. It's just whatever. He's like the TMZ politician. It's whatever's flowing in the wind that day.
So I know you're going to say there is no risk, but just to humor me, who's the biggest risk for the Democratic Party in terms of a strong candidate for president in 2+ years?
The Republican is the risk?
Democrat.
No, the Democrats? Look,
I mean, who's the risk to the Republican Party? Which Democratic candidate?
I think if Democrats come back to the middle, so if you find a Democrat that is a governor that talks like Fetterman but is different, I think they could be competitive. What they need to do is they need to find, who can they find the candidate that actually could go to a Dana White fight match and walk into the crowd, right? It's somebody that's going to be a little more common sense, fiscally conservative, socially conservative, that can get there. But they don't want to campaign for that. They go much more to the socialist wing of the party.
Well, when I was a kid, the Democrats represented the union, had the lunch pails, and the Republicans went to the country clubs.
Exactly. It's vice versa today.
Yeah. How did that
well, if you look at the protests, right? Here's President Trump, which extraordinary job he has done in such a short amount of time. Who thought? I mean, even if someone had president for 4 years could not have done what this man has done. But here he is stopping crime in D.C. Who's protesting him? The Democrats. But they're all the liberal white individuals. If you go to California, the most liberal people in California are those white Democrats who live along the beach, right? The working class people are really what President Trump has brought to this party, and he's expanded the Republican Party. So that's why I say, what Democrat you have to fear? The individual who wants to go after the Trump voter.
Former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, nice to see you back in town.
Thanks for having me.
Nice to see you. People think news just happens. It doesn't. It happens because there's someone there to capture the moment, to explain it and share it. That's my job. I go where news breaks and give you the facts. Join me for The Record on Newsmax.